The rainforests being burned to clear land, for raising cows to make hamburgers, to put in ozone-hostile plastic boxes. And what about all those people voting Green in the Euro elections? Over 2 million voters went Green. Well, how much did they know about what the Greens stood for, apart from being against water privatisation? For a quick overview of how the environment has fared in the 80s, we went to David Bellamy.
Well, I'm standing by a river, but the water doesn't flow. It boils with every poison you can think of.
I think it's basically been bad because although greenness has risen from grassroots to maximum acceptance by the media, the pace of destruction has increased. I mean, I'm very, very glad that the awareness is now there, but I'm horrified. I mean, I have been around the world 11 times in the last 12 months, which isn't the most green thing to be done. But everywhere you go, you see destruction, and that is very worrying.
This ain't no technological breakdown. Oh no, this is the road to hell.
This current interest in green issues is a bit like shutting the gate after the horse is bolted. Because, I mean, we've got a massive hole in the ozone layer.
The damage has been done through our ignorance through the past couple of years. So, you know, however quick we're going to do things, it's not going to make any difference. So you're just going to have to take it one step at a time.
We hear about these 50 hectares per minute of tropical rainforest going, and that, you know, a lot of important plants and animals disappearing. But it's not just tropical rainforest, it's everywhere. We are still seeing a destruction of so many basic ways of life. Why are we bringing completely contented people who live a village life in Sri Lanka into the sweatshops of the 21st century? Why do we build enormous, great big hydroelectric power stations in Brazil which are simply going to kill people off that lived in a perfectly sane and rational and balanced way within the rainforest, to bring them into the ghettos and the shanty towns round about major cities? Those are the problem.
At least 380 people are now known to have been killed by a leak of poisonous gas from a chemical works at Bhopal in central India.
It's clear this morning that the Soviet Union has suffered a major nuclear accident, almost certainly the most serious in the history of nuclear power.
People have been campaigning for years and years and years about this, and there's been so many people that have been concerned about it, and now the government has picked up on it as, you know, a sort of issue, and we're doing this and we're doing that. Fact is, they're not doing very much at all, but they are pushing the fact that they are doing a tiny little bit for it just to get votes.
For 30 years I've been saying, please government, take notice of the green ideals. And you've always got to kick people up the backside. And if the thing that kicked them is that they realise there are votes in it, great. So much has been destroyed. 97% of all our flower-rich meadows in the last 30 years. So if Mrs Thatcher, just for votes, she's going to save the last 3%, I'm right behind her. And I would love to see a lot more of our politicians coming along and backing things like a big new recycling plant and being there with their aluminium cans, putting it in, rather than going along and flying flags saying, oh, we don't want an incinerator for toxic waste there. So again, you see, we're into this stupid business that politicians must knock whatever the other side does. Now, our environmental issues are far, far too important to knock them. We have got to gather up the green goodwill on a pan-party front and get cracking and do things now.
We're not going to save the planet without international cooperation. Unfortunately, Mrs Thatcher didn't actually get her brownie badge in international cooperation, whether it's with Europe or with the Commonwealth. When heads of state meet, she's often the odd one out.
She can give the appearance of cutting a great figure in the world. When you look at the grey, dowdy, shagged-out people that pass as world leaders at most of these gatherings, she's like a butterfly in a moth mortuary. She glows and glistens and flaps her wings. The rest of them are very drab compared to her. And that gives you a considerable advantage. But in the long run, it doesn't mean that much. Because in the end, the big players in world politics are those who have large amounts of sophisticated weaponry in crucial places and an economy behind which can produce a lot more at the drop of a hat if it has to. And it is nothing but a delusion, albeit an understandable and a sad delusion, if British Prime Ministers, particularly when they get fatigued by the shot and shell of domestic affairs, like to play the world statesman and the great game. But it is a delusion nonetheless.
Falkland Islands may have been a triumph of British military might, duly celebrated with a parade through London and the subsequent re-election of Mrs. Thatcher, but it has to be said it brought out an unpleasant quality of nationalism in Britain, particularly in England.
I'll never ever forget, as long as I live, I was reading the News of the World during the Falklands War, and they'd actually sponsored a rocket that was going to kill people, and they'd written on it, "Up yours, Galtieri." That is so bloody intelligent, it makes me sick.
You can't deny that this fine newspaper is good for the morale of the men.
Certainly not. I just think that more can be achieved by giving them some real toilet paper.
Not with you at all, sir. What could any patriotic chap have against this magnificent mag?
Apart from his bottom?
What is so outrageous about the Sun is that it just doesn't care. It will say, that is what the working man down the pub, that's what he wants to read. They don't hide and say, oh, no, well, we didn't really print that. They say, yeah, we printed that. That's what people want to read.
I think what is more frightening coming out of the 80s is like the Sunday sport, the Wednesday sport, the Friday sport. And it's quite frightening because it is pornography. It's full of phone lines where you can just phone up and listen to sex on the telephone. I mean, like in the sport this week, a friend showed me there was a woman who got gang raped. And you could phone her up on 4 lines and listen to her talking about her rape for titillation. And that is terrifying.
Do you ever worry about overexposure?
No, not really, because modelling don't last forever anyway, so you might as well get it while you can. That's the way I look at it, you know, because you can't do modelling when you're a granny. So I just do lots of different things. I don't worry about overexposure, because it's not me who's putting myself in the paper, it's them what's doing it, and sort of, I'm exploiting them in a way. You know, it's funny.
I actually had a letter last week from a girl who said that you and Page 3 girls encourage things like curb crawling and don't make women's lives safe.
Curb crawling. Well, don't walk along the curb then. I don't know, I get cabs everywhere anyway.
No, but that because blokes, a certain type of bloke will see that in the paper and he thinks that women are there to be used, picked up, looked at.
That's true, but I mean, that's going to happen if you never had... I think it'd make it worse. If men didn't have pretty girls to look at, then they'd probably be more frustrated and go out curb crawling. I think so, anyway.
Samantha Fox putting Janice Longright in the subject of Page 3. The other main ingredient of the popular press is the royal family. So how has this supposed dignity of the British monarchy fared in the 80s?
And so in the lead now, with 2 jokers played, the Duchess of York with 16 points, the Princess Royal with 13, the Duke of York with 9, and Prince Edward with 7 points. And on with the tournament. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go! Oh, look at the greens going. The 2 greens are knocking each other out. Oh!
The Prince of Wales has again criticised a modern building, describing a microchip factory in Devon as a modern version of the Victorian prison. Prince Charles, who once said a planned extension to the National Gallery was like a monstrous carbuncle in the face of a much-loved friend, was opening the factory built by Plessy at Roborough near Dartmoor when he made his latest remarks.
My goodness, they're a wacky lot, those royals. Isn't Philip marvellous doing his comical Chinaman routine? And doesn't that nice Prince Charles know such a lot about architecture? Oh, and Fergie, of course, a possible for next year's Booker Prize shortlist with her moving insight into the world of helicopters. You see, in the 80s, The Windsors was just another soap opera, and soap was the flavour of the decade.
Why don't you just shut up, you interfering old cow?
What? What did you call me?
I called you an interfering old cow. I'm not interested in your opinions. No one is. So why don't you just shut up and do us all a favour?
Ian, did you hear what she called me?
No, she didn't mean
all these sort of chirpy East End characters. You know, they're all mates down at the market. They all go down the pub every night. You know, they all get on. If there's a crisis, everyone helps out. And the East End of London just isn't like that. It's not real. It's not like life. It's insulting.
Henry, it's not here.
What?
The food's not here.
Oh, but surely it must be. All right, who didn't pack the food?
I remember the basket on the desk.
So why I put the soybean station? It must be here.
You guys are unreal.
It's not my fault.
Whose fault is it?